Hello, my name is Sai, and I will be showcasing today my special feature for my game engine. I'm calling it SAIEngine. You can feel free to put the alliteration for SAI to whatever you feel like. I think I forgot what I put on the actual exam, but essentially, my custom feature will be MIDI playback and sound font usage. For those unaware, a MIDI file is a collection of notes, just a collection of notes that uses just any instrument that it's given, stored in a .mid file, for example, right here. Um, and a sound font file is that collection of instruments that the MIDI file will use to play the music. MIDI file, just think of it just like a collection of notes on a timeline. And the SF2 file will be the instruments that the MIDI uses, basically a TLDR. SF2 is a sound font standard. There's a company that made the standard, and it's used fairly widely. Especially you'll find them when there are soundtracks being ripped from different games. Actually, the example I'm showing here is from the track is called JJ Rocket, but it is a track from Sonic Rush, the DS game. And SF2 files are generally used to compress those or compile those instruments uh, to be used by MIDI files or anything else for that matter. Um, Basically, these are a bunch of samples for those who are interested. So my custom feature will allow my engine to be able to take these MIDI files, take these SF2 files, these sound font files, and play them live. Um, Versus like, for example, what we've been doing so far with a .wav or .ogg file, where those are pre-rendered audio snippets that are just being played back. Um, with my custom feature, these MIDI files are being sequenced and being interpreted live. Now you may ask yourself, what is the point? Why would I need to care? Um, well, to be honest, my initial motivation for this was honestly just I thought it'd be cool. Um, uh, Looking back historically at video game history, especially on things like PCs and older game consoles like the SNES, for example, maybe the Genesis too, those did something very similar where programmers and composers would code in like basically a version of MIDI where they would just put in a series of notes and certain parameters for those notes, and um, and then would have a certain sound bank or some other external synthesizer that you would take certain sound snippets from and then sequence them as such. Um, if you are familiar with tracking software, for anyone interested, basically how you would use a tracker. So you lay down sets of notes and you use an instrument to play back those notes. You're essentially using a synth and playing back on a keyboard. And so I thought it'd be really cool to recreate that in a more modern engine that you would have absolutely no reason to be able to do. I just thought it'd be cool. Um, but if we're talking technicalities here, the library I use, Fluid Synth, actually does lay it out quite nicely as to what the actual use would be for sort of synthesizing live. For example, over here, since this is low on CPU usage, that is honestly one of the big reasons of doing this, especially on lower hardware. It is very, very light on memory because you don't need to store huge sound files, could take like multiple megabytes and gigabytes worth. Um, Here, as you can see, the MIDI file itself is 41 kilobytes and the samples are 130 kilobytes. An average WAV file could take megabytes easily. And so you can get all of the plus points of getting high quality samples without having the memory overhead, which I think is really useful, especially for lower end hardware. Um, Again, yes, as said here, easier to download than MP3 or audio files, obviously, because they're much smaller. But yeah, those are one of the few advantages. So yeah, well, and then speaking of which, so to accomplish this, I use a library called Fluid Synth, which on its own is essentially just a synthesizer. It is open source, as you can see here. Um, and Yeah, basically it allows me to handle MIDI playback, so MIDI files. What I can also do with this library is connect a MIDI controller, maybe like an external keyboard, and play from there. But for my purposes, I read in MIDI files and also MIDI synthesizer. I can play my SF2 files, my sound fonts, my sound bank from this API. So uh, it is a dynamically linked library, and I can show you right here. If we go to, ignore this for by the way, that I thought that Fluid Synth would not have MIDI playback, but evidently it does. So if we go into our libraries, we have Fluid Synth right here, the library. It does have a DLL over here. I am compiling for Windows, by the way. Sorry for Mac and Linux. I do have CMake support, so I might do that soon, but for now, just Windows. Um, I'll talk about these in a second. And as you can see, if we go to our include directory, we have Fluid Synth right here. And it has its own nice little headers for dealing with all this stuff. So yeah, that is Fluid Synth. Um, if you go to my code over here, we can see fluidsynth.h being used right here. Um, uh, let's see. So what I'm allowing my Lua scripts to do is to be able to enable MIDI playback as needed, and also to load MIDI files and sound fonts, play MIDI files, pause, and resume, which are all nice little, as you can see here, nice little functions in Fluid Synth, which are very nice. Um, as you can see, I've exposed, ignore the code that might look a little spaghetti, but I don't know why that highlighting's not working. But as you can see here, we got all of our MIDI related things over here, and our corresponding audio manager functions. This is, as you might be able to tell already, completely separate from the SDL mixer. Though I will talk about that in a bit. It is completely separate from the SDL mixer. So essentially, if you really wanted to, you could have like normal WAV or OGG files play in the background while you also have live synthesis of MIDI and SF2 files. But to each their own, I guess, if you wanted to do that. So as a sort of little outline, to enable it, we have a FluidSynth settings, we initialize it, and we have our MIDI player. Um, these are all internal FluidSynth sort of things. I will let you consult the documentation of FluidSynth if you are quite interested in that. But then in our MIDI loader, we first look for the file, we add the file to the player, then we look for our sound font. In this case, I believe FluidSynth supports multiple different sound fonts, but for now, it is just an SF2 file. And so I load that in, and then I set up this audio driver for FluidSynth, which will allow me to just play it to my speakers. Um, and then I have functions for playing MIDI with specified loops, and pausing and resuming. I do say here that I am not sure what would happen if I just call play. Um, I suppose with my implementation, it would just play it normally, but I really do mean this for to be just playing it resume. This might be a little bit redundant. Well, we won't worry about that. That's fine. But the option is there, I suppose. But yeah, so these are all part of my audio manager, and these are all exposed to Lua. Oh, there's the highlighting. These are all exposed to Lua right here. Um, and so what we get now, if we run the thing, this is Cascade 7.7. See, this is literally just a MIDI file with sound and I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty neat. If you want to see the thing here, that I will take care of later. But these are all fluid synth calls that are outputting to my debug. Um, but yeah, um, to show you what components I added for this, I will show you right here. So in our resources folder, we have audio as per usual. And as I showed you, don't worry about this. We have a MIDI file and a SF2 file with the same name. I do expect it to be like that, though I could add support for multiple SF2 files if I wanted to in the future. Um, and once we go to our scene, we have the actor here um, with a MIDI player component. And once we go to our component types here, you will see a MIDI player.lua file here, which has on our onStart, we enable MIDI playback with the function. We load in the MIDI file given here. We just need the file name. We don't need the extension because the extension will try to load, or the program will try to load MIDI and SF2 files given the same file name. And of course, we want MIDI to play with infinite looping. So yeah, that is all this component is, and all these all the functions here are in the onStart function, so it'll just play. Yeah. One side note here, I guess. Fluid Synth does not support SDL2. It is fully built, at least the version I have, is fully built on SDL3. And to my chagrin, I could have just here, I can show you right now. Um, Initially, I had the Fluid Synth comes with an SDL3 and an SND file .dll. I thought, okay, it would be kind of funny if I just put in SDL3.dll and see what it does with that. As it turns out, I cannot have SDL2 and SDL3 at the same time. Shocker. So what I had to do was also rip out SDL2 and put in SDL3. So my engine is now fully capable I mean, it uses SDL3, the latest version of SDL3, which is also kind of cool. Obviously, functionality has not changed internally, but if you sort of look around, you will see little nods at where the SDL3 is actually. For example, there's no more. They've fully reworked the mixer in SDL3 mixer, so or the audio playback. So what we have now is mixer, mix capitalized, and a bunch of different um, functions and file types, or sorry, data types. Um, but otherwise, the engine works identically to the A2 engine, or at least it should in theory, um, with the added benefit of being able to use SDL3 functions and being able to be compatible with SDL3 compatible or SDL3 using libraries, such as Fluid Synth right here. Um, yeah, so that is the more or less summary of um, my custom feature. Let's see. I can play this one more time just to show. I mean, for those familiar with the track it's not the full track, as you might be able to tell. The vocals are missing. Because the way I got this sound, these sound files was given in stems here, as you can see over here. So I imported the drum kit. I just renamed this to JJ Rocket S, and it just played. But regardless of this, you can literally use any MIDI file, any sound font file, and I believe any file basically that is able to be used by Fluid Synth, and have it play live on your on SAIEngine. And I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much. Hello again. I realized that I did not really talk about my next steps, so here's that. Um, so right now it is literally just MIDI and just um, sound fonts, and honestly, it is only one MIDI and sound font. You could load in another one as part of your program. Um, Literally just be doing another load MIDI um, line here, but that would essentially replace the previous one in memory. I do not have a way so far to store it. So my next step would be the ability to take multiple MIDI file and sound font files, or multiple MIDI files in the same sound font file, and to be able to play them as needed throughout the game, um, or throughout a game. I think that would be really useful for sort of a more longer form game rather than just being able to have one at a time. It might also offer some really interesting applications for being able to use the MIDI, like hot swapping MIDI files. Because I don't know, I think it's really interesting to be able to use multiple different like bass notes on multiple or like the same sound font. It's just like there for you to use. So being able to do that, I think also being a bit more memory efficient about that would be very useful. I feel like. Another thing, right now I literally have a um, thing that only takes in SF2 files right here. But the library itself has SoundFont 3 support, which is an extended SoundFont 2 file. Um, it also has effect modulation. So you things like reverb, sort of reverb delay, basic things like that. Um, Things that you could also encode in your MIDI file. And I feel like being able to sort of do that, being able to maybe expose these effects to the engine itself, being able to modify them on the fly, would I think be really valuable for some really cool effects. Like imagine the you had a filter that you could mess with during your gameplay. So when you go underwater, for example, if you were to do that, you could be able to turn down that filter so make it feel like you're actually underwater. I think that'd be cool. Um, and one last thing would be to iron out any of the flaws that I may have introduced while porting over to SDL3, because quite literally that took me maybe 2 hours and might not be the most clean thing that I've done. So ironing out any things, maybe taking advantage of some of the features that SEL3 might have also introduced, um, might would also be really helpful. And I feel like I might do a slight bit of that moving forward. And if we're talking super long term, past the deadline for the custom feature, one of my big goals was to at some point do Nintendo DS support. I've worked with it in the past. My friends and I made a game for it during a game jam for the DS during a game jam. It was really cool. It was really cool to see all the memory limitations. But one thing I had to do as the composer for that project was to make music for it, and I could have just exported to a WAV file, but as it turns out, and as I mentioned previously, that is very hard on memory, and you are only limited to, I think, 512 megabytes in the maximum for a Nintendo DS game, for example. So, having this support for on-the-fly synthesis with MIDI and sound fonts, or any uh, file type for that matter, would be really useful in sort of very seamlessly porting to the Nintendo DS, being able to just put it there and have it work. Um, and from there, I could, have it sort of extend to multiple different things. Because, it's more accepting of lower end hardware, audio wise, at least, and really do anything to the image and rendering stuff. Um, but yeah, those are my end goals with those, and really looking forward to showcasing those and seeing it come to fruition. All right, for real this time. Bye. Thank you so much.